that's usually talked about. My dad used to have an expression. He'd say, Joe, when someone would say, this is what I value, my dad would look at him and say, don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what you value. Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I will tell you what you really value. Like many of you here, I had the privilege of having my mom and dad live with me in my dad's final months and my mom's final years. Neither my siblings nor I, just like when you had your parents and were helping them, neither my siblings nor I could separate the security of my mom and dad from our own well-being. Neither my siblings nor I could separate the needs of our parents from the needs of our children. This is all family. This is all about. It's not just seniors or just the young. We talk about it like it's an either-or proposition. This is about who we are as a people. This is about what we value. That's how our parents lived their lives and how we lived ours. I was raised in my mom and dad's house, and I say, with the single exception of a 2-year period, through my entire youth, there was never a time in our 3-bedroom home one of my parents' relatives did not live with us. Like many of you as you grew up. Because there was no alternative. And I think that's what's really missing in this debate today. How connected, the connective tissue here. The notion that we're all in this together. Every generation. Every generation. There is no question that the baby boom generation, which I was at the front end of, puts incredible pressure on Medicare and Social Security. The number of seniors will be doubling by the year 2040. So the question is, are we going to strengthen and sustain these programs of Medicare and Medicare now and for the future? Or are we going to use these challenges? It's a real challenge. Are we going to use these challenges as a pretext to do what so many have been trying to do from the beginning? Dismantle both of these programs. I said to the overflow room, which were kind enough to come, and I went to see them before I came to see you. At the end of the day, we're all old enough, we've been around enough to know that it's not just what you hear, it's not just what you see, but what you feel, what you taste, what your heart tells you. What your heart tells you about whether or not someone speaking to you means what they say. The one good aspect of growing older is that mechanism in us gets more acute. We understand better. The President and I believe that every American, after a lifetime of hard work, should be able to look forward to the security and dignity that Social Security and Medicare provide. And you know, folks, it's about dignity. It's not just about health. It's about dignity. It's about our dignity. If we had any doubt about the clarity of the choice, just how high the stakes are with regard to both these programs, we got a reminder a couple days ago from a good man. He's a decent, smart guy, a guy named Congressman Ryan, a Republican in the House of Representatives. No, I disagree fundamentally with him, but this is a smart, decent guy. But they have a totally different view than the President and I have. He's the Republican leader on what the budget should look like. This week, Congressman Ryan reintroduced what was called the Republican budget, embraced by every Republican candidate for president and passed overwhelmingly by the Republicans in the Congress. They voted for it. He and they made a clear choice. The choice they made was, in order to save, quote unquote, the programs, they lowered the standard of living for those on Medicare, rather than asking the wealthiest among us to help deal with the problem. You may remember the first Ryan budget. Nothing subtle about it. Nothing subtle about it. It dismantled Medicare. Within 10 years, it was a voucher system. It dismantled the system and meant that the average senior would be paying another $6,000 a year out of pocket for the Medicare benefits they now receive. And the reaction of the nation wasn't very subtle either. So after an overwhelming rejection of the last year Ryan Republican budget plan, they went to work to draw up a new one. But if you take a look at it, they really didn't change anything they're trying to do. And so if you don't change much on the substance, what changed? What's the difference between these two budgets that were introduced? Well, it's the way they talk about it. Literally the way they talk about it. And don't take my word for this. All of you are adept with computers. Go online to an outfit called Politico.com. Extremely well-respected publication that all the major papers look to. Go on Politico.com and read an article that's in yesterday's or the day before. It says, how Paul Ryan sold his budget plan. He sold it to all of his Republican colleagues by telling them there's a new way to talk about what they're going to do without getting hurt politically. He told them, he told his colleagues that they could win this debate this time with essentially the same plan. If, I quote, you use, quote, the right poll-tested words. If you use the right poll-tested, now again, don't take my word for it. Go look at the article. He said if you use words like bipartisan, if you use phrases like fix Medicare, if you use phrases like choice, the American people will not punish you for being for this plan. The American people, though, especially us, where we are in our lives, we're not about to be fooled. I have more faith in the American people than I think our Republican colleagues do of being able to cut the wheat from the chaff here and see what's going on. The vast majority of the American people, whether they're Democrats, Republicans, or Independents, know there's a fundamental difference between us and the Republicans on this issue. We believe in strengthening Medicare. They don't. Make no mistake about it. The Republicans in Congress and their amen corner of Romney, Santorum, and Gingrich, if any one of them get their hands on the White House, the keys of the White House, I promise you, you will see Medicare ended as you know it. And it's not just about what they want to do to Medicare. It's about the other benefits for seniors that they want to undo. We passed a law, that has been referenced already, to close the donut hole. A significant portion closed already, but it will be totally closed when this law comes fully into effect in 2014. Saving the average senior with high drug costs $600 just this last year alone, and that will increase. They want to repeal it. They simply say they want to repeal it. We passed a law that provides for preventative services Debbie talked about. I can remember sitting there, and thank God my mother had at least 2 financially successful children, not me. Well, my mom lived with me. My mom, we'd go up and get my mom's prescriptions. And we had to literally lie to mom and tell her no, all her savings covered everything. Because to my mom, she did not want her children having to make sacrifices. But we all chipped in. About $6 grand a month, all told, among us. For not only that, but at the very end where my mom needed some care. My mom needed somebody there just to help her with her lunch when she wasn't, as it got toward the end. But my mom, it was all about her pride. Joey, show me my checkbook. Show me my checkbook. And my brother would quickly run and deposit more money in my mom's checkbook. Because she had dignity that she wanted to preserve. This is about what these guys don't get. It's more than whether or not my mother and father got the care they needed. It was how they got the care they needed. I built a new house. When my kids went off to school, we sold the big house we had and we built another house. And on the ground floor we put in, it was sort of on a hill, I built a whole suite for my mom and dad. They would not move in. Joey, my whole life I had someone live with me, which is a great asset for her kids. My whole life. But I'm not going to do that to my kids. You all know the deal. You know it, you feel it, you taste it. Every one of you feels that way. What do they want to do? They want to go in, and the ability of my mom just to say, I don't feel well, I'm going to get a checkup. She knew it would cost 20% she'd have to pay to get that checkup, the cost of the checkup. And she didn't want to ask her kids. Obviously, if we knew, we'd work out something with the doctor beforehand, but we didn't want to ask her kids. How many times do any one of you feel that pain? You're not sure what it means. How many of you wonder whether or not that thing that just happened to you, is it a harbinger of something more serious? Just want to go ask the doc. Folks, these guys want to repeal all that. In the process, I would argue they'll be repealing that sense of dignity, which is an incredible part of what this is all about. They want to repeal all. They want to repeal all of the things that I've mentioned. The end result is you're going to have to pay at least $600 more a year for your drugs, 20% more for your visits to the doctor. You're going to see traditional Medicare change as you know it. Look, we'd be so much better off as a country if we spent a lot less time and energy fighting off these efforts to dismantle Medicare. And I mean dismantle it. If we just spend a little more time together, Democrats were working to figure out how to preserve and strengthen Medicare. We can make Medicare solid again. We don't have to gut it to make it last. Look, in our health care law, we've already extended the life of Medicare and its solvency to the year 2024, just by one thing. We've uncovered and recovered over $10.7 billion just since we've been in waste, fraud, and abuse that we put back into the system. If our Republican colleagues would join us, we could reduce the cost of Medicare by $100 billion just by doing one thing. Saying drug companies cannot charge Medicare any more than they charge for any other federal program. They charge our elderly any more than they charge our veterans. That's $100 billion. We could save another $20 billion by asking the very wealthy of us, those who can easily afford health care, if they have retirement incomes that are significant, to pay a little more. That add another $20 billion. Look, there's a lot more we can do to save this program, but it requires someone on the other side who wants to preserve the system, really cares about preserving it and not gutting it. Look, we're prepared to sit down, the President and I already have, it's blown up, sit down and work with our Republican colleagues. You may remember all this talk about, the Biden budget talks with the Republicans, and we talked about all these things. But not one single thing was able to get done. But if you don't start from the premise that this program, Medicare, must be preserved in its current form. Look, folks, Social Security. Social Security is in better shape. But here again, Republicans can come up with an approach on Social Security that they say, quote, save Social Security for the next 75 years. And they do it by cutting the benefits. Some salvation. A plan like the one that Governor Romney's introduced would cut Social Security benefits for your kids and your grandkids. It would cut by $2,400 a year the typical worker in their 40s would get by the time they get it. It would cut by $4,700 a year the Social Security coverage anyone working in their 20s would get by the time they retire. And here's the thing. Here's another thing nobody's really noticed. Governor Romney and the rest have supported also a thing the Republican leaders call cut